Introduction Volume 6 begins near the final stretch of the long return journey. Rudius, Eris, and Ruigerd have crossed dangerous lands together, and now the road home feels closer than ever. Even though the journey looks hopeful, the mood is not completely peaceful. Rudius still carries responsibility for Eris, trust in Ruigerd, and the strange influence of the human god guiding him from the shadows. The party chooses their next route carefully. Every decision matters because they are moving through kingdoms, borders, and political danger while still trying to reach the Fator region. As they approach more civilized lands, the story shifts from monster survival to human conflict. Cities, nobles, soldiers, and old family ties begin to matter again. Volume 6 is important because it closes one era of Rudius's journey. It brings reunions, tragedy, the second turning point, and the emotional separation that changes him for years. Event 1, Road to the Dragon King Kingdom. The party reaches the Dragon King Kingdom and begins planning the safest path forward. Rudius wants the journey to continue smoothly, but the world keeps placing new responsibilities in his path. While traveling, Rudius encounters familiar food and culture that remind him of his previous life. Small discoveries like rice become unexpectedly emotional because they connect his two worlds. The human god appears again and pushes Rudius toward Shiren Kingdom. His advice sounds useful, but the audience already understands that trusting him always carries danger. Rudius learns that Lilia and Aisha may be trapped in Shiren. What began as a road home suddenly becomes a rescue mission for members of his own family. Rudius decides to follow the lead. Eris and Ruigerd stand with him, proving that Dead End is more than a travel party now. They are companions who face each new crisis together. Event 2, Reunion with Paul. The group arrives near Shiren Kingdom, a place connected to Roxy and also to political trouble. The city looks impressive, but danger is waiting inside its walls. Rudius enters the kingdom hoping to solve the problem quietly. He is careful because he knows the situation involves royalty, hostages, and people who may try to use him. The trap is revealed when Pax Shiren targets Rudius. Pax wants to use him as bait for Roxy, and the rescue mission turns into a personal humiliation and political mess. Rudius is captured and confined, forced to think rather than simply overpower the situation. This is one of the moments where his intelligence has to matter as much as his magic. Even while trapped, Rudius keeps searching for a way forward. His worry is not only for himself, but for Lilia and Aisha, who are still caught in Pax's scheme. Event 3, Family Conflict and Regret. The story introduces Zenoba Shiren, Pax's older brother. At first, he seems strange and unpredictable, but his obsession with dolls and strength gives him a very memorable personality. Zenoba becomes fascinated with Rudius's figurine craftsmanship. This unusual connection turns into the key that changes the entire Shiren situation. Instead of a simple prison escape, the arc becomes a strange political comedy mixed with real danger. Rudius has to understand the people around him and use their motives carefully. Zenoba's admiration for Rudius shifts the balance. He may be eccentric, but his position and strength make him exactly the ally Rudius needs. With Zenoba's help, Rudius moves closer to saving Lilia and Aisha. The trap Pax design begins collapsing because he underestimated the people around him. Event 4, Searching for Zenith and the displacement victims. The rescue finally reaches Lilia and Aisha. For Rudius, seeing them alive is a moment of relief, because the family scattered by the teleport incident is slowly being found again. Aisha's reaction to Rudius is complicated. She has heard stories about him, but meeting him directly is different from meeting the heroic image she imagined. Lilia is grateful but also deeply aware of the danger they escaped. Her calmness hides the exhaustion of someone who has spent years protecting Aisha in a hostile situation. The conflict in Shiren resolves quickly once Pax loses control. Soldiers and nobles turn against the instability around him, and the rescue ends before it can become a full war. Zenoba and Pax are both sent away in the aftermath. Rudius leaves Shiren having gained a bizarre but valuable new connection. while Aisha and Lilia begin their journey toward Paul. Event 5. Eris faces her feelings. Aisha's personality comes into focus after the rescue. She is bright, sharp, confident, and already sees herself as someone who can serve and support Rudius. Rudius is surprised by how capable she is. Aisha is still a child, but she carries herself with unusual discipline and seems far more prepared than he expected. Lilia's influence is clear in Aisha's behavior. The idea of being a maid is not just a job to her, it is part of how she understands loyalty, usefulness, and family duty. Rudius does not fully know how to respond to Aisha's devotion. He cares about her as a sister, but he also realizes that their family situation is unusual and emotionally delicate. This section gives the volume a warmer emotional break before the darker events ahead. For a little while, the rescue feels like a true success. Event 6. Toward the Fitoa region. After leaving Shirn, Dead End returns to the road. The party's destination is still the Fitoa region, and every step forward brings them closer to the truth of the teleport calamity. Ruijerd continues guiding them with quiet strength. He has become a guardian figure to both Rudius and Eris, and the trust between them feels steady and earned. Eris also keeps growing during the journey. She is no longer only the reckless noble girl from Roa. She has become a battle-tested companion who can stand beside Rudius. Rudius reflects on how much has changed since they were first thrown to the demon continent. Dead End began as a survival arrangement, but now it feels like a family of its own. The road ahead looks open, but the story is quietly preparing a major disaster. The closer they get to home, the closer they get to the second turning point. Event 7. Second turning point begins. The party encounters a mysterious man and woman on the road. The man is Orsted, the dragon god, and his presence immediately changes the atmosphere into something terrifying. Rudius feels an instinctive fear before understanding why. Orsted is not just strong, he carries a pressure that makes ordinary survival instincts scream. The situation turns worse when Orsted hears Rudius mention the human god. That single connection makes Rudius an immediate target. Ruijerd and Eris try to respond, but the difference in power is overwhelming. Orsted is beyond anything they have faced before. The second turning point begins here. In one encounter, the story tears away the sense that Rudius can handle every crisis with preparation, magic, or cleverness. Event 8. The first encounter with Orsted. Orsted attacks with terrifying speed and precision. Rudius tries to fight back, but even his strongest magic feels small against the dragon god. Eris and Ruijerd are forced to watch the gap in strength firsthand. Their courage matters, but courage alone cannot overcome someone on Orsted's level. Rudius is brutally defeated. The scene is shocking because it reminds the audience that this world contains powers far beyond his current reach. At the edge of death, Rudius realizes how little control he truly has. This is not a strategic loss or a hard lesson. It is an encounter with absolute helplessness. Orsted leaves Rudius dying, but Nanhoshi intervenes. Her presence is mysterious, and her request to spare him becomes the only reason Rudius survives. Event 9. Dead End is overwhelmed. Rudius wakes after being healed, shaken by what happened. Survival does not feel like victory, because the fear of Orsted remains carved into him. Eris is deeply affected by seeing Rudius nearly die. Her feelings become more intense because she realizes how easily she could lose him. Ruijerd also understands the seriousness of the encounter. Even he, a seasoned warrior, could not protect the group against Orsted. The party continues traveling, but the mood is different now. The road feels heavier because they have seen a threat that completely surpasses them. This aftermath is important because it plants the seeds for Eris's later decision. She begins to understand that love alone is not enough if she cannot protect the person she loves. Event 10. Rudius is killed and revived at last. The party nears the end of their long journey. The return to familiar lands should feel joyful, but unease hangs over everything. Ruijerd prepares to say goodbye. His mission with Rudius and Eris is reaching its end, and the separation feels like the end of a whole chapter of their lives. For Eris, saying goodbye to Ruijerd is especially emotional. He has been teacher, protector, and companion through the hardest years of her life. Rudius also feels the weight of the farewell. Dead End was built from necessity, but it became something real, and parting from Ruijerd leaves a quiet ache. Ruijerd leaves them with dignity and warmth. The farewell is not loud, but it is powerful because it closes the journey that began on the Demon Continent. Event 11. Eris and Ruijerd survive the shock. Rudius and Eris finally reach the Fitor region, but the home they imagined is gone. The land has been scarred by the teleport calamity. The devastation is overwhelming. Villages are ruined, families are scattered, and the scale of the disaster becomes impossible to ignore. Rudius sees the reality behind the word calamity. Until now, the teleport incident was something he survived. Now he sees what it did to everyone else. Eris learns the truth about her family. The Boreas household has been destroyed, and the people who once defined her world are dead or gone. The grief hits Eris with full force. Returning home does not give her peace. Instead, it takes away the last illusion that her old life can be restored. Event 12. Return to the ruined homeland. Eris turns to Rudius in her grief. She asks him to become her family, because everything else she depended on has collapsed. Rudius wants to comfort her, but he is also young, confused, and overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the moment. That night, Rudius and Eris share an intimate moment born from grief, longing, and desperate closeness. It is tender, but also emotionally complicated. For Rudius, the moment feels like a confirmation that they will stay together. He believes the bond between them has become permanent. For Eris, the same moment leads to a different conclusion. She loves him, but she also feels painfully aware of her own weakness after the encounter with Orsted. Event 13. Philip and Soros are gone. Eris makes her decision in silence. She believes she must leave Rudius and become stronger before she can truly stand beside him. She leaves behind a short message, but the words fail to explain the depth of her feelings. What she means as resolve becomes something Rudius misunderstands completely. Eris departs with Ghislaine to train, choosing a harsh path because she thinks strength is the only way to protect her future with Rudius. Her departure is painful because it comes from love, but it reaches Rudius like rejection. This misunderstanding becomes one of the deepest wounds in his life. The image of Eris leaving marks the emotional break of Volume 6. The journey is over, but the cost of reaching home is far greater than anyone expected. Event 14. Eris chooses strength. Rudius wakes to find Eris gone. At first, he cannot understand what happened, and confusion quickly turns into panic and despair. He reads the message and interprets it as abandonment. Because of his old trauma and low self-worth, he believes he was not enough for her. The pain breaks him. After surviving monsters, politics, and Orsted, it is emotional loss that finally leaves the widest wound in his chest. Rudius sits alone in the ruins of the life he thought was beginning. The title of the chapter fits perfectly because the emptiness inside him feels like a physical hole. This heartbreak leads directly into the next stage of his life. Volume 6 ends the return journey, but it also begins Rudius's long struggle with abandonment and recovery. Event 15. Eris leaves Rudius. Volume 6 is one of the most important turning points in Mushoku Tensei. It resolves the long road home while opening several deeper emotional wounds. Rudius rescues Lilia and Aisha, gains Sonoba as an unexpected ally, and finally reaches Fitoa. But every victory comes with a heavy price. The encounter with Orsted shows Rudius that the world is far larger and more dangerous than he imagined. It also pushes Eris toward her decision to seek greater strength. Eris's departure is tragic because it comes from love but is received as rejection. That misunderstanding becomes the emotional bridge into the next arc of Rudius's life. Volume 6 closes with the end of Dead End's journey, the loss of home, and the beginning of a new loneliness. It is a conclusion, but also the start of Rudius's hardest emotional recovery. Event 16. Rudius breaks down alone. The party reaches the edge of the Fitor region, and the journey home finally stops being an idea. The land in front of them carries both hope and dread, because every step brings Ruddy closer to the truth of what happened after the teleportation disaster. The familiar roads no longer feel familiar. Villages are damaged, people are scattered, and the silence of the landscape tells Ruddy that home has not been waiting unchanged for him. Eris looks at the ruined land with a mixture of anger and fear. She has survived the demon continent and countless battles, but seeing her own homeland broken wounds her in a different way. Ruijerd quietly watches over them, understanding that this part of the journey is not only physical, it is emotional, and neither Ruddy nor Eris can fully prepare for what they are about to learn. This event adds more breathing room to the return home. The story is no longer about crossing distance, it is about facing the emotional cost of finally arriving. Event 17: Ruijerd's farewell and the journey's end. Once the truth about the Boreas household becomes clearer, Eris is forced to confront losses she cannot cut down with a sword. The people and status she once knew are gone, leaving her with grief and confusion. Ruddy wants to comfort her, but he is also shaken by what they learn. He can understand danger and strategy, but he cannot easily repair the emotional ruin left behind by the disaster. The room feels heavy with words left unsaid. For Eris, the collapse of her old life makes her question what kind of strength she truly needs going forward. Ghislaine and the others help make sense of the situation, but explanation does not remove the pain. The information only makes the loss more concrete. This event gives more detail to Eris's grief and explains why her later decision is not sudden. It grows from the realization that the world can take everything unless she becomes strong enough to face it. Event 18: The future path split apart. The encounter with Orsted leaves more than physical wounds. Ruddy survives, but the memory of overwhelming power stays with him like a shadow. Eris and Ruijerd also understand what that battle meant. They fought beside Ruddy, yet the difference between them and Orsted was almost impossible to measure. For Ruddy, the experience creates a new kind of fear. He has grown stronger for years, but Orsted proves that the world still contains monsters far beyond his reach. This fear quietly affects the way he sees himself and his future. Survival no longer feels guaranteed, and victory no longer feels like something skill alone can promise. By expanding this moment, the deck makes the second turning point feel heavier. Orsted is not just a battle, he is a warning that changes the emotional temperature of the story. Conclusion: Eris makes the painful decision to leave so she can become stronger. From her point of view, this is an act of love and determination, but she cannot communicate it in a way Ruddy can understand. The goodbye note becomes the center of the tragedy. It is short, unclear, and devastating because Ruddy reads it through the fear that he has been abandoned. Ruddy's collapse is not only heartbreak, it is the shattering of the hope he built during the journey, the belief that he and Eris had finally reached a place where they could stay together. Eris rides away toward training, carrying her own pain and resolve. She believes she is moving toward a future where she can stand beside Ruddy, not realizing how deeply her departure wounds him. This expanded ending clarifies why Volume 6 is such a major turning point. The homecoming succeeds on the surface, but emotionally it leaves Ruddy at one of the lowest points of his new life.